Hi, I'm Rob and this is Gems of War. In this video I'll be going over the Soulforge and giving you my opinion on what I think is good and bad in there. But first things first, on a Monday what I always recommend is going into the shop and making sure you grab the weekly event troop. In this case it's the Fireborn Eagle. You get two of these in this case for just 300 glory, which is pretty decent. And what this does is deal a certain amount of damage to an enemy and burn them. And if the enemy dies, create 2 elemental stars and gain an extra turn. The traits are nothing special. The last one's the most interesting. Create a red gem when my turn begins. With this kind of troop, you're going to want to have it probably in 3rd or 4th position in your team. Then only cast it when you've done heavy damage to an enemy already, and you can take them out and kill them by casting this guy. That way you're going to create 2 elemental stars and gain an extra turn as well. The extra turn element of this spell is super handy, because the trouble with creating elemental stars usually is that if they don't align, you're going to set up the opposition. But with the extra turn, you can use those elemental stars hopefully to align them and gain a load of mana for the rest of your team. So really worth it and really worth grabbing. What I also would recommend doing while you're in the shop every week, if you've got the spare glory, is grabbing the Spoils of War. You can get 10 of these, and that will give you 10 event keys, a bunch of gold, extra souls, and treasure maps too. For, you know, if you've got like a load of glory there sitting doing nothing, always worth grabbing that every single week at the same time. Alright, now for the Soulforge itself, let's start with the weapons. Trick and Treat, Duskbringer, etc. are here all the time and are reviewed in previous Soulforge videos, so take a look at those if you need to find out about them. Now, Vulcan's Mace is the only weapon here then, apart from those ones. That's interesting. This deals damage to an enemy boosted by Nexus allies, then creates a mix of 6 red and brown gems for each Nexus ally. So another one of these weapons does a very similar spell that we've been getting each week for a while now. The interesting thing about this one is we do actually use brown as part of the mana colour for this, which we generate with this, so we're going to actually boost ourselves up, which is quite handy. So it's an okay weapon. I would get it, but what I would say is don't get it from here. It's going to cost you 200 diamonds and all those extra resources as well, and you can get it from the event. And the raid boss, go to the shop, and the 3rd tier will cost you a total of 250 diamonds, and it's exactly the same weapon. The Vulcan's Mace is available from there, and for 250 diamonds you get gems, you get exactly the same weapon, but as well as that you get the Potion of Rejuvenation, the Potion of Explosion, the Potion of Enchantment, a bunch of souls, sigils, troops. You get the Godslayer troop, which will make this event easier, and more besides. So if you want this weapon, an absolute no-brainer to go and get it from the raid boss event shop instead, unless of course bizarrely you have not enough gems but stacks of diamonds. Alright, so now back to the Soulforge and let's take a look at the troops. Scroll of Reborn, Hattai, Ascendant, Leonis Tower are again in other Soulforge review videos, as they're here all the time. First mythic we've got here is Amarok. Bit of a poor man's Iron Gut in a way. Like High King Iron Gut is a much better troop than this. Something that does a very similar spell, deals damage, then with a chance to devour. But this devour chance is boosted by red gems and burning enemies. So you need a lot of red gems going on and burning enemies to give this a chance to devour. And it is largely based on luck. And if the enemy does die, then it creates 9 red gems. The one interesting thing about this troop is that 3rd trait. The fact that it stuns a random enemy when matching 4 or more gems is pretty interesting. With Iron Gut, you can't devour anybody that's immune to devour as part of their traits. But if you stun them first, then that takes that away and they become devourable. So that is one advantage that Amarok does have over Iron Gut. But for me, Iron Gut is a massively superior troop to this. So I wouldn't craft Amarok. Enraged Kurandara is extremely high resources cost, and I'd only do it if you're an endgame player with massive resources to spare. If you have a choice, if you've got the power orbs out of casting this guy or Zul'Goth, it's Zul'Goth all day long. He's nowhere near Zul'Goth's level for me. It does an okay spell. It deals 38 damage to all enemies boosted by Doomskulls, then convert yellow gems to Doomskulls and conjure a Doomstorm. So the spell is decent. The 40% chance to curse all enemies when my turn begins is decent, but for the same power orb cost and more mana cost, I don't think it's anywhere near Zul'Goth's level. Zul'Goth just kills an enemy outright, burns and freezes all remaining enemies, and creates 12 skulls. This often results in the death of 2 enemies, so that's really, really good. And for the same power orb cost, if you have the power orbs and you're going to create one of these, it's Zul'Goth all day long out of Enraged Kurundara or Zul'Goth. Right, next up we have Mistralus. Really good. One of the best things about her is that third trait, enchant all allies on 4 or 5 gem matches, is absolutely superb. But the damage she does is somewhat random. It deals a certain amount of splash damage to 1 to 4 random enemies, so you can't even choose who you cast it on in the first place. And then you're going to do, like it says, 1 to 4 random enemies. If it chooses to cast it on one enemy and it chooses the enemy at the top, you're going to be doing a really, really small amount of splash damage, because obviously with the splash damage you can't actually hit anybody above them. You'll only be hitting the enemy below. So you do get to jumble the board and gain an extra turn as well, and she is decent. But I do love that third trait. But if the AI is on your side and decides to cast it onto 4 random enemies, and they're typically the second or third ones, you will do a lot of damage. Obsidius is really, really good. Superb, in fact. Deals a lot of heavy splash damage to a random enemy, then destroys a 5x5 block, which will typically be 25 gems, and then a 50% chance to deal more light splash damage to a random enemy. So really good. He deals a lot of damage and has a lot of mana regen at the same time. But a third trait as well is absolutely superb. Stun all enemies on 4 or 5 gem matches can actually be a game changer depending upon the team you're fighting. But stunning all enemies is a really, really nice trait, and one of the main things about his spell. And we've done Zul'Goth. Zathanos is an idiot. Does true damage, yeah, and then steals half the magic from an enemy, but if the enemy dies, then summons 1 to 3 random undead. So to be worth casting, you have to have lost enemies in the first place. I mean, lost allies in the first place, sorry, and have them within kill range of this. So yeah, I just don't think he's that good. He's one of the early troops. Yeah, you hardly ever see him in enemy teams. Only worth crafting if you've got an absolute bunch of resources to spare and don't mind wasting your diamonds, basically. Yasmin's Chosen is kind of interesting. She deals quite a low amount of scatter damage boosted by entangled enemies, then creates a bunch of green gems. She's good, but only if you can get her to work in a team that creates a lot of green, so you get a much better chance of getting a looping effect from that create 10 green gems. One of the other good things about her is her third trait, entangles a random enemy when matching green, which is decent because that's going to boost the power of her spell. Yeah, an extra 10 damage per entangled enemy. So an idea for this, especially with the new Elementalist classes, where the Elementalist third trait freeze, burns, entangles, etc. an enemy on a 4 match. Quite often now it's really easy to get the entire opposition entangled using the Elementalist class. So that would guarantee her, like in my case, like basically 100 damage per cast, and you get it in some kind of looping team that uses green at the same time, and she could be really, really good. Is there anybody else? Nope. So in order of the mythics, not including Zul'Goth or Enraged Kurundara, I would rate Obsidius first, Mistralus second, Yasmin's Chosen third, and Amarok fourth. Now let's take a little quick look at the legendaries. I don't usually recommend crafting legendaries. They're going to turn up in chests a lot more often than the mythics do, and it's better to wait for them that way and keep your diamonds for the mythics. Willow, I used to really like Willow. I used him in early game and middle game. Really handy troop, destroys a row, then deals damage to all enemies, boosted by brown gems removed, destroyed. The traits are nothing fantastic, even though they're quite handy when you're an early or middle game player. But the cool thing about that spell that I really liked is you destroy a row. So if you look at the board, you can quite often use that to generate an extra turn for yourself. Say, for example, you have a vertical line, and say there's 2 red, 1 brown, 2 red. By choosing that brown gem that was in the middle, you can destroy that, do that damage, boosted by the brown gems removed, and get an extra turn out of it at the same time. So, quite a handy troop, but again, wait for it to turn up in chests. Magnus deals damage to all enemies, boosted by diseased and poisoned enemies, then disease and poison all enemies. Yeah, okay, but nothing special. A lot of better troops since. This one, Umber Wolf, deals damage to the first two enemies, then places Hunter's Mark and Death Mark on them, then transforms into a Nosferatu. So very specific team-based thing. You need to use that one, and not great in my opinion. Summit Imp is actually really, really good and really interesting. Deals a small amount of scatter damage at first, then creates 7 red gems, and if the enemy dies, gain 8 magic. But we don't care about that gain 8 magic bit, because that third trait, you gain 8 magic on yellow gem matches. You put this in a team that loops yellow, and my god, that scatter damage can go wildly out of control. And if you get 2 of these guys in the team, you're going to be gaining 16 magic on yellow gem matches, and that's going to make your scatter damage go absolutely nuts. So a fantastic troop, and if I was going to craft anything that was legendary, it would be that one here. But there's the troops, there's the Soulforge review. If you liked the video, it'd be cool if you liked and subscribed if you've not done so already. But most of all, thanks for watching. See you again next time. Bye for now.